America is becoming a nation of renters. The coronavirus pandemic shut down the economy, and as a part of the CARES Act, the federal government suspended people's need to pay rent. That means that 6 million renter households are behind on rent. And this has really put the screws to the mom and pops that might own a house. For example, this house that I'm in right now is owned by a person who lives in Nashville, owns 2 houses in this neighborhood, rents one of them to me. Now, I've continued paying rent throughout this pandemic, as has my roommate and my third roommate who lived here for a time. However, there are 6 million people who have stopped paying rent to their landlords, and the reality is that this guy who owns this house works a normal middle-class job. He's not Mr. Moneybags' landlord, and there are millions of other property owners like him throughout the United States who own properties like this. You know, he has a young child, he has a wife, and the income from this house is a way that they build their wealth so that they can retire. You know, basically, we help pay the mortgage on this house. In fact, we probably pay the mortgage on this house because he bought it when this neighborhood was not nearly as nice as it is now. And so eventually, we'll pay the mortgage on this house, and he'll be able to sell it. And it'll be a very good thing for him because he'll then have money to retire. Now, this is a good thing. It's a normal middle-class American building their wealth. This is the kind of thing that we need to see in America. However, the CARES Act, which stopped normal people from getting evicted during coronavirus, has been terrible to people like my landlord because it has meant that these large private equity companies backed by big banks who represent billionaires, who represent real estate investment trusts, who have basically infinite supplies of money, can wait until a guy like my landlord can no longer afford to own the property that they own. He then has to sell it to a big, nameless, faceless corporation, or you know what, let's give them a name because they do have a name, BlackRock, who has been buying up thousands of houses at prices that normal middle-class people can't afford throughout the whole country, with the express intention of renting them out so that America can become a nation of renters. Now, who does this benefit? Who does choking off all of this money to these small landlords benefit? It benefits these big companies because they can wait it out. And this is the same thing that happened when the government shut down all of these small businesses. They shut down all of the businesses. But who's going to have the money to survive that? A small store that's owned by a family that maybe has the operating cash to get through the next month, the next couple of weeks, because the reality is most businesses really only have the cash on hand to get through the next couple of weeks. Or is it going to be Walmart who survives the pandemic? Is it going to be Amazon who survives the pandemic? This pandemic and the government response has been one of the single-handed worst transfers of wealth from small business owners, and that includes landlords, to big corporations. And we are seeing a real-time consolidation of the economy in this country to away from the hands of small, regular, ordinary people and into the hands of the ultra-rich. And this is something that the progressive left and the populist right both agree on. This is why you saw the Bernie Sanders to Donald Trump voter, because they recognize the fact that the center left and the center right both don't care. Both of them are taking money from the BlackRocks of the world. Both of them are given power from the BlackRocks of the world. Even if you look at Barack Obama, there is a document that was leaked that showed that his cabinet was selected by Wall Street investment bankers. You think of him as a progressive guy, and many of his social policies were, but in reality, a lot of these center-left, center-right, and by the way, the Biden administration, who just continued this policy of screwing landlords, and granted, it does benefit people who don't have the ability to pay their rent for the short term, because the money is definitely going to be due, and that just means that there's going to be a larger sum due. So it's really just saying, we're not going to kick you now, we're going to kick you 2 months from now. But it's 2 more months for them to bleed out normal people who own a house, who might own a duplex, who rent it out, so that a firm like BlackRock can come sweep in and take ownership. Which means that normal people like you and me will have less interactions where we are helping build up some regular person's wealth, some regular person like us's wealth. You know, I very well, if I had made the right decisions financially in the future, could purchase a house like this and rent it out to somebody else and have them pay the mortgage, and then eventually I would have an extra property which I could continue to rent out and take that income and use to live on when I retire, or I could sell it for a lump sum when the market's good and have all this cash to retire on or to help put my kids through school. Instead of all of that, the shareholders of whatever large company ends up buying out all the houses of the United States will have better returns. And if you're somebody who already is wealthy, this is great. If you're a regular person, this is terrible. And this is policy that is being disguised as something that's helpful to the middle class, which is particularly more disgusting. And this is not something that is happening by accident. The World Economic Forum, which is an international organization that unites economists, politicians, and powerful people from across the world, they come together every year at Davos. You might have heard of the Davos group, the Davos meetings. They have specifically come out and said that by 2030, in their 2030 goals, they've said, you will own nothing and be happy. You will own nothing and be happy. And while there are certainly benefits to renting certain things, there are certainly benefits to taking out a loan to purchase things, the idea that you will own nothing and be happy means effectively that you will permanently be enslaved to paying whatever rent that these corporations think is fair for your car, for your house. They would eventually like you to rent your computer. They'd like you to rent your furniture, so that you own nothing. And this is the steps that they hope to get to by consolidating the economy so that the BlackRocks, the Walmarts, the Amazons, the Applebees of the world have complete control. If you're like me, you're somebody who wants to support a person with a name, with a face, somebody that you know who owns a local business, whether that be a restaurant that competes with Applebee's, whether that be a store that competes with Walmart, whether that be a landlord who you know and you know that your rent is going to help pay for his child to go through school one day, then this is really disturbing. And if you're somebody who wants to be able to afford a house one day and see that these institutions that have unlimited access to capital are able to pay amounts for houses that no normal middle-class person can pay, to take them off the market, to rent them for exorbitant rates, it's very disheartening. And it makes you think, what are the people in power in D.C., what are the people in power in our state houses doing to protect us from this? Are we doing enough as normal people to demand that we are protected from this? Because the reality is that there are billions of dollars to be made by the BlackRocks of the world, by the billionaires of the world. There's a reason that they got so much richer during this pandemic, and that they will continue to get richer throughout the rest of this decade. And we need to advocate for ourselves as regular people, and we need to pick people to elect, to put in positions of power who truly care about our interests. And we need to demand that they stand up to these super powerful institutions so that we don't get completely screwed.